Hello and welcome to Africa in Focus on FRTV, and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ruthie Kari, and I will be with you for the next 25 minutes. You can join the conversation on all our social media handles at Africa in Focus, and the hashtag is Africa in Focus. Health and social infrastructure across Africa continue to face growing pressure and rising demand. Water scarcity is deepening in several regions, raising concerns over long-term sustainability. Food insecurity remains a major challenge as millions continue to face rising costs and limited access to food. As digital connectivity expands, experts are warning about increasing cyber threats and data security risks. Health systems across Kenya and much of Africa are facing growing strain. In many public facilities, patients are dealing with overcrowding, limited medical supplies, and long waiting times. For some communities, accessing quality healthcare is no longer just a challenge, it is becoming increasingly uncertain. Experts say these gaps in infrastructure are not only affecting treatment today, but also shaping long-term health outcomes across the region. Our correspondent has more on this.
In public hospitals and health centers, overcrowding, limited resources, and shortages of medical personnel remain major challenges. For many patients, accessing healthcare often means traveling long distances, waiting for extended periods, or struggling to access essential treatment and medication. In some communities, health facilities are operating with limited equipment and supplies, making it difficult to meet growing demand. At the same time, rapid population growth and increasing economic pressure are placing additional strain on already stretched systems. Experts say these challenges go beyond healthcare alone. Issues such as poor roads, inadequate sanitation, limited housing, and gaps in public services continue to affect overall social infrastructure and quality of life. For vulnerable communities, the impact is especially significant as limited access to healthcare and social services can affect education, employment, and long-term well-being. Health experts warn that without sustained investment and stronger systems, these challenges could continue to widen inequalities and reduce access to essential care. As governments work to address these concerns, questions remain over how quickly improvements can be made and whether current systems are equipped to meet future demand.
To help us break this down further, I'm joined by a health expert. Kindly introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Valentine Wanjiko. I am a final year medical student at the University of Nairobi, currently pursuing an undergraduate degree in Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
How serious are the current gaps in health and social infrastructure?
The gaps are currently the gaps are currently very significant because they contribute to very high maternal and neonatal mortality. They also contribute a lot to the treatment failures. We also have things like increased antimicrobial resistance when it comes to treatment with antibiotics, and we also eroded public trust. So now with only partial household coverage under SHA, which is currently like 70 to 75%, and widespread reports of stockouts, long waits, and unaffordable care, they really undermine the UHC goals that we have and perpetuate inequalities, especially for the poor rural populations and the informal settlements. So I think urgent action is needed to prevent avoidable mobility and mortality. Because if one person is sick in a particular household, it affects like the whole household and matters economically and many other factors.
What are the main challenges affecting service delivery today?
I think the key one, and I had also alluded to it, is the workforce shortages and the maldistribution. I said the current doctors to patients ratio, according to WHO, as we are still below par. And that is one of the main challenge. We also have a challenge in the medicine equipment and frequent stockouts, whereby people are trying to access for medicine in the hospitals and they still can't find. It's a really big challenge, and also the fraud in claims, and maybe inconsistent quality standards in the weak referral systems, especially through the devolution of healthcare, whereby we have to scale up. So yeah, the weak referral system is also part of the big issue.
What needs to be done to improve access and quality of care?
Like strengthening the referral system?
Yeah.
For sure. We really need it to ensure that everybody gets the right to quality healthcare as promptly and as need be. Yeah.
Water scarcity is becoming a daily reality to many communities across Kenya. In some areas, households are forced to ration water while others rely on distant or unreliable sources just to meet basic needs. With demand continuing to rise and supply becoming less predictable, experts warn that parts of the region are moving closer to what is being described as water bankruptcy. Without sustainable management, the pressure on these vital resources is expected to intensify. To get more insight into this growing concern, I'm joined by a water resource expert. How serious is water scarcity in Kenya and across Africa today?
Very, very serious, because we are talking about 33% access to piped water as a country. And when we talk about also water, or when we also talk about 33%, you see, when we will get to even 90% or even 80%. So that is piped water in Africa, that is in Kenya. And now in Africa, we have seen cases of really droughts that have hit the global news and channels. We have cases of droughts here, famine here. So as a globe and as a country, we are doing so badly. And it calls for a leadership that is people-centered. Africa has had a lot of issues about leadership. We have seen coup d'etats, and what coup d'etats do, the country has sobered up, is ready for 10 years, 5 years, but again, a coup d'etat happens, and they are destabilized. Libya, before Muammar Gaddafi died, or even being assassinated, that is the word, Libya was doing good in water water security. But now, after the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi, what is the Libya that you and I are seeing in the news? So, coup d'etats, and the leadership that also, you see, a good dancer knows when to depart from the stage. We have had cases of African leaders going for 35 years, you're still in office. Look at Uganda, look at Cameroon, look at which country? Gabon. Presidents that don't want to leave power. I'm not saying that even when you have a close look at Europe, like the Russian president, he has been in power for a lot of time. It's more than 25 years. He has been also in power. But what is he doing? Russia is water kind of secure more than the African countries.
What are the main drivers behind what is now being described as water bankruptcy?
Factors contributing to water bankruptcy, like in Kenya, is water comes from the forest. If we have deforestation, we will have water bankruptcy at a very, very top level. So, like a case study of Karura Forest that sits at an acreage of about 1,000 hectares. thanks to the late Wangari Maathai, that really fought men. He fought, my goodness, the Moi regime of that day, but she came out gun blazing and fought the government of the day. And Karura Forest was able to remain forthrightly, being able to do what? Being able to contain the water catchment area. And it's unfortunate because the other day I had conversations that the government of Kenya wanted to do what? Wanted to kind of scrap a certain section of the Karura forest and make it for, I think it was develop it. When we do that, water bankruptcy will still be spoken story in households. And also a quarter of Mau Forest, the renowned Mau Forest, a quarter of about, I think that is about 400,000, it has about 400,000 hectares. So a quarter of it has been depleted already. So what does that say about water bankruptcy? If we are going to do that, deforestate the place, water bankruptcy is a talk of many in households.
Thank you for your insights. We'll step away for a moment. When we return, we'll continue unpacking the key issues shaping lives across Kenya and the wider African continent. Stay with us as Africa in Focus continues on FRTV. Across Kenya and the wider African continent, food insecurity continues to affect millions of households. For many families, putting food on the table is becoming more difficult, as rising prices and climate-related disruptions limit both availability and access. In both urban and rural areas, the effects are being felt from reduced meal portions to increased reliance on less nutritious alternatives. Experts warn that without intervention, these challenges could have lasting effects on health, livelihoods, and economic stability. Our correspondent reports.
For many households across Kenya and Africa, food insecurity remains a growing concern. Rising food prices, climate-related disruptions, and economic pressures are making it increasingly difficult for families to access enough nutritious food. In both urban and rural areas, many households are being forced to reduce meal portions or rely on cheaper alternatives. Experts warn that if these challenges continue, they could have long-term effects on health, livelihoods, and overall economic stability.
To help us understand this issue in more depth, I'm joined by a food security expert. Kindly introduce yourself.
My name is Mary Jengash. I'm a food security and livelihood specialist. I'm currently consulting with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, supporting the Sudan office. I am here to give my own views, and I'm not representing the organization in any way. This feedback is based on my experiences exclusively.
How serious is the current food insecurity situation in Kenya and across Africa?
That the food insecurity numbers were released for Kenya last month. So, if I'm not wrong, the numbers were over 3 million of people that need food assistance. I didn't look at the nutrition numbers because they also released the acute malnutrition levels for children under 5, but I have to confirm that the main drivers of food insecurity are there are many drivers, but the main one globally is conflict, followed by climatic related shocks like floods and dry spells. But we also have other drivers that like high food prices and crop production constraints, lack of pests or livestock diseases. those are usually some of the drivers of food insecurity. And I just will confirm the numbers for Kenya, but the food security situation is deteriorating mainly in most of the countries, not only in the region but also in Africa and other places, driven by those drivers specifically.
What are the biggest challenges preventing people from accessing enough food?
We have talked about access before, and we said food access has two fronts. We have physical access and financial access. Physical access is mainly the constrained infrastructure or bad roads, for example, that you cannot access food in the market or you cannot sell your food in the market. The other one, the biggest one I see, is financial constraints or economic stress, whereby a household is not able to buy food from the market or to buy the food groups that are not available at the household level. That one is usually the biggest constraint, and that one is driven by economic or income generating shocks. Yeah, like a household, the household size is big and only one member is able to generate income, or their income generating activities have been disrupted.
What practical steps can be taken to improve food security moving forward?
That one comes to the issue of resilience, like just investing in sustainable agriculture, given that our country is mainly depending on agriculture for food and income. So like looking at interventions that are going to be sustainable, for example, investing in food production in the rangelands for the livestock farmers. Also, a lot of capacity building and financial support to farmers, be it fisher folks that are looking at aquaculture, and also investing really in those food production systems like fisheries, yeah, and adding value to those sources of income. For example, adding value to fish and enabling the farmers to be able to export, and also looking at the cropping households, looking at sustainability of that system in terms of investing in irrigation to make those food production system resilient to climate shocks, and other man-made shocks like conflict.
As more people and institutions move into the digital space, new risks are emerging alongside these opportunities. From cyber fraud to data breaches, digital threats are becoming more frequent and more complex. For many users, concerns over privacy and security are growing, especially as reliance on online systems continues to increase. Experts warn that without stronger safeguards and awareness, these risks could undermine trust in digital platforms and services.
As digital systems become more central to everyday life, cases of cybercrime and data breaches are increasingly being reported. Both individuals and institutions are facing new and evolving threats, often without sufficient protection or awareness. For many users, there is growing concern about how secure their personal information really is. Experts say stronger safeguards and improved awareness will be critical in protecting users and strengthening confidence in digital systems.
To unpack this further, I'm joined by a digital security expert. How serious are digital security threats in Kenya and across Africa today?
Okay. So the company I work for does a report on the state of cybersecurity in Africa every year. And I think data protection is one of the things that most African countries have struggled to adopt. They've developed policies, yes, but enforcing them on the organizations as well as their individuals has been a bit of a problem. One of the examples I can give you is with Kenya in 2024 during our Mandamano. ministers, MPs, members of parliament, governors, senators were all getting text messages from individuals, casting them out, maybe telling them things that are not so nice. Now, technically, that is against the Data Protection Act, because we should not be able to reach out to someone if they have not willingly consented to give us the information for us to reach out to them. But did we see anyone get arrested for it? Not really. We saw people get abducted for it and disappear, which is unfortunate. But ideally, Africa is still getting its hands on the fact that we are becoming digital economies. Another good example is the fact that Kenya has adopted almost a completely digital payment system where most people don't carry cash anymore. And we've had this technology for more than a decade now. But when you cross the border and go into Rwanda, Tanzania, maybe Uganda, Burundi, maybe Congo, the further out you might go, you find it's not very prevalent in some of these other African countries. Is the reason because the technology doesn't exist? We have it. Is the reason because they can't adopt that technology? They can't. I think there's a bit of a hesitation towards moving to a kind of technology that we may not fully understand because of the fear of the power that it might have that is unforeseen. For example, here in Kenya, the young people managed to organize themselves on Twitter and riot against the government. Some other African countries, most other, are terrified of such a thing happening and will be very happy to ensure that it doesn't. So I'd say Africa experiences a lot of cyber attacks, yes, and all nations do. I don't think there's any country in the world that can tell you they don't. The willingness to adopt a structure or a strategy where the country can improve on its own technology, improve on methods to detect cyber attacks, block them, prevent them, or even go a step further and develop an internal team that is dedicated towards not just defense but also attacking other nations that may attempt to attack them is not something I've seen across the continent very often, and it's something I'd like to see a bit more. I think one of the ways Africa could get better in terms of improving its technology is ensuring, one, that the understanding and knowledge of and awareness of that technology is as democratized amongst its people as it can possibly get. Move away from the fear of if people have knowledge, then you lose power over them. It happens, yes, but something else happens when people gain knowledge. They also perform better. They're more efficient, their output is more valued by the nation, and they could do better things for their country. So yes, in terms of digital security in Africa, I think it's still growing. Kenya is a few steps along the way. South Africa is also a few steps along the way. I've worked with some companies in Ethiopia and Nigeria that are also pushing quite hard in improving their security. But it's not a joint effort right now, and even for some of those governments, it's more individual organizations that are going around it. Although I do suspect over the next 5 to 10 years that most African countries will have picked up in terms of developing technical documentation, cybersecurity policies, things of that nature. We're seeing a large shift right now in Africa towards that direction, and I think there'll be a lot more to be able to say on this as time unfolds. Yeah.
What are the biggest risks facing individuals and institutions when it comes to data and online systems?
All right, let's go into this. So, biggest risk facing, let me start with individuals. With individuals, it's a long range of risks, right? Now, when it comes to data, we're looking at all the private information you have on your phone. Now, some people will usually say, I don't have anything private on my phone. You do. You just don't know that it's private. So I'll give you an example. With the technology that exists today, it's easy enough for me to get into your phone and clone any of the voices you have in your voice recordings, even if they come from your friends. It will be easy enough for me to impersonate you using pictures that you have, that you've taken, that you've never shared. And for girls, it's a little more pronounced because you can take 100 pictures and only use 2, So I could be going through your Instagram and thinking, this is not charity, and then I ask for a picture and you send me a picture that is not on Instagram, that I've never seen before. And that is more likely to make me believe that it is you. So impersonation, meaning this person could take over your whole life. Use your name, use your ID cards, use your finances, use your bank accounts, and even ruin some of your relationships. I'm sure many of you may have seen this before. Where you get a strange text from a friend, and the minute you're done reading it, you know they've been hacked, because they would probably never send you anything like that. So for individuals, there's a large range of risks. You could be used in fraud. You could be used in situations where your name should never show up. Let's see. One of the most interesting cases I've seen. There's a friend of mine, a lady. I wouldn't necessarily call her an influencer, but she has a large presence on social media, Instagram. And because of it, she decided to start selling shoes online. And somebody managed to send her, or rather somebody sent her an email from China, from the same manufacturer that she was targeting, giving her a discount on the shoes that she can buy so she can sell them here in Kenya. She clicked on the link, gave out all her details, as if she was logging into a platform. And the minute she did, she was logged out of her Instagram, and then subsequently logged out of her Gmail. And then we started getting very interesting messages from her. Some of them were very personal, which was strange. Some of them were for sales. So you get a message in the morning telling you how, we've been friends for a long time, I'm going through something, send me some money. The next one, something towards the effect of implying some kind of romantic ideology, like, hey, could we do this for coffee, or who disliked you, things of that nature. Of course, she called me maybe a few hours after it had happened. I wish she'd called me a bit sooner. But the minute she did, we tried to start getting a handle on it. Now, unfortunately, by the time we were done, she had lost maybe a lot or a little, depending on you, but about 20,000, an order that she had made for shoes, which never appeared. And then her Instagram was closed, her Facebook was closed, and her Gmail was closed. And some of those took months for us to be able to get back. Now, for organizations, I'd apply the same thing to their individuals, especially their C-suite. Them getting framed or having their titles or names used for things that they should not be used for. But then, once you go just a step above that, is how the organization could be affected as a whole. They could face lawsuits for providing data that they shouldn't have. They could lose a lot of money paying for some of those lawsuits. They could lose their reputation as a whole. We've seen companies drown and completely disappear because they went through a horrible cyber incident. And the worst one is they could have a silent agent sitting within the organization that is constantly monitoring everything they do and providing that data for that party. That's an even harder risk to deal with, because sometimes you don't even know that there's someone sitting in your environment that is constantly collecting data that you would prefer they never have access to. So yeah, I think high level, those are some of the risks I would mention.
What practical steps can be taken to improve digital security and protect users?
Encrypting data, whether it's on transit or in storage. Just making sure that data cannot be accessed cleanly, like what I was just explaining about WhatsApp. That would be a good method. Multi-factor authentication, whether that's biometric, if we're looking at your face, we're looking at your fingerprint, we're looking at a second password, an OTP has been sent to your phone, anything along those lines. Protecting user data by collecting only what is needed by the organization. So just because you're signing up for a bank account, do I need to know where you live, where you went to school, what your 3 names are, what your 3 names of your father, your mother, your grandparents, maybe where your shags is? I don't need to know that. Collect only data that's relevant for use. Now, this gets a little more difficult for hospitals, which have their own security law known as HIPAA, that is meant to protect health data. Now, for hospitals, it would be a little different because they have to collect that sensitive data, and anything about your health is initially automatically sensitive data. So how could they deal with that one? I think encryption would work for them, but having security solutions, tools that monitor your environment, tools that allow you to block strange access to your environment, whether it's new users that have created accounts, whether it's somebody who's logging in at a time they normally don't log in. Having systems that are actually capable of telling you whenever there's an incident that might be occurring that you might not be aware of. Some of the best security solutions, I think there's a very long list that I could go into, and I prefer not to. But depending on the need of your organization, there's a long list of them that exist in the market today. Some which are open source that could be used for free, and some which, of course, require a bit of money depending on the size of the organization. But when it comes to user data, every user is responsible for their data, but any organization that collects user data is automatically responsible for that user data. Meaning, if any of your data is even given out without your consent, you have every right to take them to court. And in Kenya today, you actually have the Data Protection Act that you can use to sue a company that uses your data without your consent. So yeah, in terms of protection, I'd say those are the top that I can think of right now.
That brings us to the end of today's program. I'm Ruthie Curry on FRTV. Thank you for joining us on Africa in Focus. Stay connected.